Russia has been a major power in space exploration from the 1950s. It was the first country to put a satellite in orbit with the Sputnik 1, and also the first country to put the first human in space in Yuri Gagarin. One thing that both Yuri and Sputnik had in common was that they were both launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in southwestern Kazakhstan. Much before Kazakhstan became an independent country, Baikonur was a symbol of pride for Russia, and since it became an independent country in 1991, this cosmodrome has become a symbol of cooperation between Moscow and Astana. But now, the war in Ukraine is sowing deep divisions in Kazakh society. A large number of Kazakhs are openly supporting Ukraine in this war. Some of them have even taken up arms to fight for Ukraine. An almost equal number is also supporting Russia. On Crux Decode, the consequential fallout on Kazakhstan of the Russia-Ukraine war. How does Astana balance its interests with Russia on the one hand and a war that is costing it dearly? How does Kazakhstan maintain its newfound warmth with Washington and other Western partners? And is the current Kazakh President Tokayev indebted to Vladimir Putin for saving his job in January of last year? Since Russia's annexation of Crimea back in 2014, Kazakhstan has taken a balanced position on the conflict, distancing itself as much as is possible. It has also, over the years, abstained from several United Nations votes to condemn Russia, including after this war started. Kazakhstan has also consistently refused to recognize breakaway Ukrainian provinces in the Donbass, which is the very reason why Putin launched this war in the first place. Astana maintains its traditionally close relationship with Moscow despite ongoing Western courting. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken was in Kazakhstan recently, where he held the first ever meeting of what is being called the C5+1. That is, all the Central Asian republics, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and of course Uzbekistan, along with the United States. For the last 20 years during the war on terror in Afghanistan, America needed these Central Asian republics for transit routes into Afghanistan. But as the war winded down, America started engaging less and less with these countries, and also alternate routes opened up into Afghanistan. But while the government of Kazakhstan tries to keep neutral, there are Kazakhs, both in Kazakhstan as well as ethnic Kazakhs who live in Russia as well as Ukraine, all of whom seem to have picked one side or the other in this war. In Russia, there are ethnically Kazakh regions and towns that became a part of Russia during the Russian imperial expansion through the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries. There are also recent immigrants who moved to Russia during the Soviet regime. In Ukraine, there is a Kazakh diaspora tracing its roots mostly through the Soviet era. Over time, many Kazakhs have moved to Ukraine for work or family or education. As Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine has progressed, some Ukrainian Kazakhs have taken up arms to defend Ukraine. There are no exact numbers of how many Kazakhs have directly participated in this war, but unofficial estimates say it could be a few thousand. The government of Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, Kazakhstan's current president, has no love for his countrymen fighting on Ukraine's behalf. His government recently instituted a law where one might have to face up to 9 years in jail for taking part in a foreign conflict. A previous corresponding law, which was adopted in 2014, right after the Russian annexation of Crimea, kicked off the Donbass conflict. Since then, several Kazakhs have ended up fighting in Donbass and other parts of Ukraine. At least 30 criminal sentences for participation in foreign conflicts have been handed down by Kazakh courts between 2015 and 2019. The most recent conviction of 3 years was conferred in 2020. At least 3 mercenaries are known to be awaiting a trial. Most recently, in April of this year, Kazakhstan's security forces said that they're investigating at least 10 cases of Kazakhs who fought in Ukraine. However, the threat of prison is not stopping ordinary Kazakhs fighting for Ukraine, or even for that matter, those who are fighting for Russia. While it is unclear how many Kazakhs are fighting, as neither army has released an ethnicity breakdown, it is estimated that about 400,000 Kazakhs lived in Ukraine as of 2018. This is data compiled by Radio Aztik, a Kazakh language radio station which is pro-Ukraine. By the 2021 census in Kazakhstan, about 600,000 ethnic Kazakhs were living in Russia. The Kremlin's partial mobilization did not spare even the traditionally Kazakh-populated regions of the southwestern part of Russia. Anti-war activists argue that Kazakhs, as well as other ethnic minority Russians like Chechens and Uzbeks, are being racially targeted for heavier mobilization. Since 2014, there have been various interviews and videos, testimonials of ethnic Kazakhs fighting against Ukraine. Like I said, the exact number is unknown, but Russian media, which are penchant for exaggeration, claims that hundreds of thousands are on our side. Moscow remains Astana's closest security and economic partner, with imports from Russia over a third of all Kazakh imports. This is mostly finished manufactured goods like cars and home appliances, smartphones, etc., in return for Kazakh oil and minerals. In 2022, according to the Kazakhstan National Statistical Bureau, 36% of all of the country's imports came from Russia. Russian and Soviet cultural legacies are still very strong in Kazakhstan. In fact, less than half of the population uses the Kazakh language. More Kazakh people use Russian in their everyday life. Signboards on major roads and shops in Almaty or in Astana are more in Russian than they are in Kazakh. There's also one more catch for the government of President Tokayev, and that's because he received support in suppressing the January 2022 protests. It was called the Bloody January Protests, which was a mass uprising triggered in large part because of rising economic inequality. The uprising was put down by Kazakhstan's authorities after an official request from Astana. The Collective Security Treaty Organization, or the CSTO, which is a Russian-dominated military alliance, sent about 2,500 troops, most of them Russian, to support the government of Kazakhstan. Besieged by great power interests from all sides, Kazakhstan's official policy since 1991, since it became an independent country, has been a careful balancing act between different world powers. But that may be under serious strain now. This is yet another example of a country that is being forced to rebalance its interests because of a war in its neighborhood.